Hi everybody, Nigel with you, Nigel the Modelling Bench. Welcome back to the channel, and here we are now with part 2 of the build of this HobbyBoss 1/35th scale Scammell Commander tank transporter. So in part 1 we got the chassis built up. I showed you how to get that all done and keep it square and everything. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it went together so well I wasn't really able to show you many techniques, but I'll try and do another one. So here we are now, Sunday the 4th of June. Still got this bloody cold coming and going, so it's a pain in the bum. Rear suspension is done. If you watched on the channel, if you remember, I did some changes to this to make it all sort of movable and everything, so we can make sure the wheels get on the ground. So if you haven't seen part 1, go back and have a look. There's a lot of little hints and tips you can take over to any sort of general truck modelling. So as we discussed before, I think it was one of my beginner videos, instructions are a bit sort of all over the place. Here we're going on building cylinders and battery boxes and stuff, and then over the page we're into the winch. The exhausts I'll cover in a second, and then we're into wheels, bumperettes, and then we're back onto the chassis again. So what I'm going to do here is just jump forward to this step here, step 9. I don't see the point in going on and building the winch and everything and all the air tanks and exhausts while we can just, you know, get this chassis done and let it all go off, let it cure. In the meantime, what I have done, as I said in one of my beginner videos, something I always do is look forward in the instructions where there's halves of things going together and get them glued together so we can get the seams sorted, so when we come to work on them they're ready for having their seams dealt with, rather than sort of, oh, we got to put the fuel tanks together now, so we'll get them glued together and then we'll sit and we'll wait for half an hour or a couple of hours or even a couple of days while the glue cures, and then we'll get it's just sensible to do it at the start. So as you can see, we've done the fuel tanks there. I did this in one of the beginner videos, showed you how to remove those horrible little tabs that were in there. So that's done. Seams been gone over with super glue and then sanded back, so that's done. I've done the ends as well. There's an ejector pin mark in the ends in the brackets, you can see them all over here, so that's dealt with. And then these are going to fit in there like that. No, they're not. They're going to fit in there. Where are you going? Come on, Nigel. They're going to fit in there like that, and then once that's glued in, we'll go around the edge and again sand that out and everything, and we'll have these lovely sort of one-piece fuel tanks, so that'll be nice. I've also gone on and built up these bits of the transmission which are horrible. A square lump with a sump on it. Come on, HobbyBoss. Jeez, you could have done better than that for a kit the price of this one. I think they should have been a lot better. So assembled all that up together. I don't quite know how we're going to get that to go in the chassis, because it has to feed in between that prop shaft and that cross member, and I don't quite know how it's going to go in there, but we'll see when we get there. But I want to get all the suspension done first before we have all that sticking out. So basically, moving on now, step 9. The main part of this step is the front suspension, so the axle with the steering arms and everything on. I've got all the parts off here, and what they would have you do is have it all glued together. And as you can see here, I found an error in the instructions as well. You can see here that they're pointing this arrow from the center of this arm is K63, into that shock absorber, and then the shock absorber going into that hole in the chassis. That's not correct. It's not a shock absorber actually, it's an actuator for the steering. That hydraulic cylinder does not go into that part of the chassis. That hydraulic cylinder is much lower down, as you can see there. It's the top of that part that goes into the hole. So there, it should be an arrow from there to there. Okay, the arrow should be from the top of that arm, not the bottom. In fact, no, it should be from the bottom of this, because it's upside down. Sorry, forget that one. It should be from there into there, and that goes into there. That does not go into the side of the chassis. But we're going to make this all work. So not because I want to play with it, it's just to make it positionable, and it's for you guys to see how I go about doing it. And it's something I've done many times before. I've done it on all my other Scammells I've done, and it's a great way of making it so when you part the model up, you can have the wheels turned. It always looks much better to have the wheels turned than have them just facing straight ahead. So this is going to be a little bit more complex than normal, because we've got these actuators which obviously push and pull to make the steering work. So we're going to have to also make them go in and out. It's going to limit the amount of steering we're going to have, but we're going to make them go in and out. So first things first, we can see here these end pieces, like on this side, K69 and H62 is going down over the axle, around the pins, and then that they would be glued on there. But what we're going to do is, when you turn over the page, you can see we have the front wheels going on. We've got the back plates or the brake drums or whatever for the front. We're going to glue those arms into there, and that will keep them together and moving on the axle. But first of all, we've got to do some drilling. So we have to look at, I haven't got the K3, I haven't got that part off, have I? We have to look at what we're going to drill, what we're going to pin, and what we're going to not drill through. So what I try and do is have because what we're going to do is basically take a piece of brass rod, take a piece of plastic card, punch a hole in it, punch it out so it becomes like a washer, and then put this through the drilled hole. You're going to see this in a minute, through the drilled hole, and then put the washer on the other side, drop a super glue, and that's it. It's all sort of held together. Don't worry, I'll show you in a minute if you don't know what I'm talking about. But for now, I'm going to go on and get this part K3 off and get it cleaned up. Right, so starting with these pieces here, I've noticed these pieces here, H62, they go onto the axle like so. And as you can see, with the wheels in the straight ahead position, there's very little clearance in there for any room for anything to mess about. So what we're going to do here is put the brass rod into there and have it coming through the piece above. So that would basically go into there like so. Alright, and that will be glued up solid. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill this one out, put a brass rod in there. We'll drill this one out and have it pivoting on there. So the way I'm going to do this, it's easy to do this one because we've already got a hole there which is just over 0.8. Now all of this doesn't need to, there's no high precision here, it doesn't need to be all exactly perfect and everything. But I do want to drill the deepest hole I can so that the brass rod has the largest area of contact in the plastic we can get in there. So there we go, so that's drilled through. Okay, now we can take our brass rod, stuff that in there, and we can see that it's a nice fit in there. So what a lot of people forget to do, even I sometimes forget to do, sand up the brass rod. Okay, I'm also going to sand the end flat as well. In fact, I'd be better off with a file, wouldn't I, for this? Let's grab one of my nice Infini diamond files. We use the medium. That's the super fine. Medium. Right, and we'll just file the end of this flat. There we go. And then with the diamond file, get that through there, and then what we can do is get some super glue on the end of there, just like so, and glue that in. There we go. We don't want it to stick out any further than the original plastic molded bolt head already did. Okay, so that hasn't affected our clearance at all. As I say, there's no, it doesn't have to be all perfectly, absolutely dead square and everything. Obviously it needs to be pretty good, but you don't have to worry about everything being perfect. It doesn't need to be stunningly perfect. I've just noticed that end of the brass rod has got a bend in it. That would be cutting off such a short length, it should be fine. Okay, so that's going in there, so that's glued in there now. And then that's going to go through here, where that pin is. It's not going to go through the other end, it's going to go through where that pin is. So we've got two options here. What I'm going to do, we can either try and drill through the centre of that pin, or go on the back and mark where we think the centre is. As I say, it doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be pretty good, but it doesn't need to be 100%, spot on jig bore accuracy. And then we're just going to make a mark on the face, see what it looks like. If I think it needs to go over, what I'll do is just drill it on an angle and then come back. There we go. can drill through there, and hopefully the drill will come through and it'll be so dead centre it'll remove that pip. I doubt it, but it might. There we go, it did actually, it came through, look at that, lovely. So that's gone through like that. Okay, just finagle the drill in there a little bit like that. And then that can slide down over there, like so. Go on to there. Okay, and then we'll make sure it's the right way round, although it doesn't really matter. And then what we can do is come along with a old pair of cutters. Don't use nice cutters for this. Just use some old gash things, and we're going to cut the brass rod off just about 1 millimetre above where it needs to be. There we go, just like that. So that's now in there, and then what we do is take that piece off, get our file the end, okay, and then we can, what we're going to do now is make sure we drill the other end. So don't ever put two parts together if if it's not if you haven't drilled both ends of it. I'm not sure that glue is going off in there. No, it's not. I'm going to get some of my instant glue, get this other end drilled out, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've got the other end of those drilled out now. I got a little bit confused there because these two parts here, K6 and K8, are handed, and they have a little slight angle on them, so be sure not to get them mixed up. So I've got those drilled out. I've drilled these right through. They're going to be the pivoting part, and the actual pin will be glued into here because this is outward facing and I don't want to ruin the look of that bolt head on there, although I'll probably go through when I drill it, but it'll look a lot better than having the washer affair that I'm going to show you now. So basically we've got this now, and we need to make that a pivoting joint that won't fall apart. So I've got some 20 thou plastic card here, and I have my pin punch, and I have a 0.8 punch there, which is the second but smallest. And what we can do is just make some holes. You don't have to use 20 thou, you can use thinner. What I find is if you use really thin, the washers tend to go all out of shape when you punch them out, so I find it better to use something a little thicker. Right, so I've got 4 holes on there now, and then this one here, I think this is about 1.5 millimetre diameter. That's that one there. So what we can do is put this piece of plastic card over there, look from behind, get the hole. I don't know if you can see in there, but I've basically got these 4 holes in here. What I'm doing is getting these, sliding that into there and getting it lined up in the center of that hole, and then pinch it, hold it, turn it over, and then grab my little hammer wherever it may be, Mr. Unprepared, and then just tap that through, and we should end up with something like a little washer. There we go. There's a little washer there that we can now take and push over that 0.8 pin. He says typical camera's on, so it's not going to go. Just like so. There we go, that's gone over. So now you can see that's pressed over there, and all we do is take a little drop of super glue and place a blob of super glue on the back of it there, and that will hold it in place. So now we have a working joint that won't fall apart, and that's basically what I'll do with all these joints. So we'll do another one for your delectation, if that's the right word. There we go. And did it go? It's stuck on the inside of there. Look, there we go. There it is. So we can get this one, push this over that pin, in there, go on. It doesn't want to go on, but it will. And sometimes when you're doing this, if you're doing this like with a Bronco kit, some of the parts are so small and flimsy you have to be very, very careful not to break anything. But I'm having trouble getting that to go over there. It really doesn't want to go. And I'll take this opportunity to say, excuse my nails, yes, I know they're disgusting, I bite them and I cannot stop. But there we go, that's gone over now. So you can see that's gone over there, nice and tight. Take a blob of super glue on the top. And we'll just wait for that to dry, and then we can sort of sand that back, sand it around, make it a bit smaller, do whatever you want with it really. That one's dry now, so we'll get that out of the way. So we can come along here and just sand the end of our piece of brass to get it down lower. We can go around that washer and sort of make it smaller if you want to. Just make it look a bit more sort of in scale. But if you're after the absolute perfect look, then I mean you could use hexagonal rod and drill that out, and cut it into little slithers, so it looks like a big bolt head or something, or a big nut. But I can assure you when this is painted, it hardly notices. So there we are. So that'll go on the axle like that now, and as you can see, it'll still work. So that's that part done. So I've got to now go on and do the rest in exactly the same way, and there's no point in me having the camera on showing you that because it's just basically more of the same. Drilling out, putting the rod in, drilling out, making these, gluing that on the back, it's the same thing. So I'm going to go on and get the rest done, and then I'll come back when we get to a point where something critical is going to happen. Okay, so done a little bit of work off camera. As you can see, done the same with these as I did with those others that you saw, basically drilled and pinned, and same thing over and over again really. So that's all good. I'm just going to put a drop of super glue on the back of there just to fill in that hole. There we go. So you can see I've made some more washers. I've made some smaller ones as well rather than those great big things. They were a little bit too big, I think. I've also drilled and pinned these arms. Now these arms are going to go into the side of the chassis here, okay, and they are going to go like this, and they're going to pivot, and these hydraulic units here that drive the steering, I've drilled those out and put a piece of 1.2 brass rod in, so they're now like a hydraulic, like a shock absorber. I'm obviously going to need to shorten them to allow them to move, but I don't know how much movement there's going to be. I could calculate it, but you know, life's too short for that sort of stuff. So what I'm going to do is get it all dummy built up, and then what we'll do, this rubber gaiter area on here, we'll just reduce that and reduce the length of the rod to allow it to move in and out. So there we go. So that's going to have to go into there and have a washer put on the back of it for a pivot. But first of all, I'm going to build everything onto these arms here. So excuse me. I guess the other thing we could look at doing, I've just put that down on there, some super glue. The other thing we could look at doing is getting these together. You can see I've got these wheel back plates off because they're going to basically hold these hubs together. So as per the instructions, I'm going to get the axle the right way round. It's got two little nubbins here, one on each side, one on the front. There's nothing on the back, it's plain. So I'm just going to do that, and then this is going to go on like that. Okay, and then we need to make sure we get the right underside one, and that's going to be that one. It's going to go on there like so. Okay, so with them like that, we could hold them in place. Blimey, it's going to be fiddly. And this needs to go towards the hole for the actuator, needs to go towards the back, so that's going to go in there. So I think probably the easiest thing to do here is going to be to glue one of these into there. Grab some extra thin. That's going like that, so that's going to go into there like that. Oh, come on. Right. So that's going into there like that, and then we'll do the opposite on the other side. So that's going to be that way round. So that's going to go in that one. Nice strong joint. It's got a lot of work to do. So we'll leave that like that and let that go off. So we'll leave that for 20 minutes, let that dry, and then I'll come back and we'll move forward. And so, voila, there we go. This is all just loosely held in place. There's nothing glued or anything, but you can see that when I turn the, that just wants to keep coming out. When I turn the steering, you see that's all working. So what I'm going to do now is go on and get it all put together with the you know, with these spacers on to get it all locked in, and then we'll see how it all looks, and if we have to make any adjustments, we will. And there we go. So as you can see, it's all working. I'd imagine on the real thing these hydraulic rams are what does the steering. So obviously they would pump fluid into that one, pull fluid out of that one, and you would get the steering working. So there we go. All I did here was shorten the bellows a little bit, shorten that brass rod. So now we have fully working steering, and it's all still sort of pretty much accurate scale wise. So when we look under the wheel arches, we're not seeing big blocks of plastic running. You don't really need to bother about doing these. You could just have that arm just moving around in there or something, I don't know. But I thought I may as well go the whole hog. It adds to the fun, and also now it means I can position the steering however I want. So there we are. I haven't glued the axle in yet. The axle fits beautifully. It sort of clips in place because I want to make sure that it's parallel with the chassis, and then what we'll do is fit the rear axle parallel to the front axle. So what I'm going to do there is get my blocks and my little Stabila magnetic spirit level. We can see here that the bubble is just over to the left. So if I put the chassis on here, okay, so make sure that bulge, that transmission bulge, is down in one of the holes. So that's all down, so I can check there, and you can see the chassis is also just over. So I need to be able to get in there. Now, unfortunately, this spirit level is slightly too wide to go in between. So I need to find something. So I've got an eyeglass here. I know that's parallel, so I can put that on there, and we can see that the axle is pretty much parallel with the chassis. So that's all good. So we can literally come along with some extra thin and glue it in place. So that's all good. If it wasn't, which sometimes happens with truck kits, all you do, the low side, shim it out. Just put a bit of plastic card in between the spring and the axle, and that'll get it shimmed out. So there we go. So we just double check before that glue cures. Just double check we're all good. So spirit levels over that way. Put that on there. And we can see the spirit levels over that way. Turn that 180 degrees. Just to check it's all parallel and everything's good. There we are. Happy with that. So we can let that cure. So that is how I go about doing working steering. So what did I use? How did I do it? Let's just quickly cover that again, because I know some of you will be asking questions. Right. So first of all, I drilled the holes out, and as I say, you have to decide one side you're going to fix the pin into. So like on this part here, I've fixed the pin into here. I've drilled through the track control arm or the tie rod, and then put the washer on that one. So .8 drill is the first thing. These drills here are the best to use. They're absolutely brilliant. You'll see a lot of these type things on Amazon. These things, don't bother. They're useless. They're okay in a power tool, but they're useless as a hand drill because they've got a very coarse helix on them, as you can see there. Okay, what they do is they screw themselves into the plastic, and with the smaller sizes, they just, when they get to the end, they just snap off. So they're awful. These things are brilliant, but make sure when you buy them, I suggest getting them from Premium Hobbies, because you know you're getting the genuine ones. There's lots of copies out there, particularly when you see like darker boxes like this, and they're like £2.50, and they're absolute utter rubbish. These things are brilliant. The genuine microbox drills are brilliant. So I'd suggest those. I used a David Union 150 spring chuck vise. What I like about this, you've got these little ones here that you can get from the likes of Hobbycraft and stuff, and you have interchangeable collets. But what I like about this one, this will go all the way from 0.3 to 5 mil. Okay, so you can hold the tiniest drill, the 0.3 in there, all the way up to 5 mil. It's got a really expanding collet, so that's really good. And also it doesn't squeak on the back, which is really nice. It's aluminium, it's all very light, it's beautifully made, comes beautifully packaged, and again, available from Premium Hobbies. Don't forget NMB10. For filing the end of my brass, I used these diamond taper files. These are Infinity, you've seen me use those before. Again, Premium Hobbies. Brass rod, you can get from anywhere, get it on eBay, Amazon, whatever. I've used 0.8 for all these pivots, and I've used 1.2 for those piston rods, and I've used 1.2 here, because the holes in the chassis were 1.2. So rather than fill them out, I've just used a piece of 1.2 brass rod. And then the piece of plastic card here was 0.5 thick, and I made those little washers in this punch here. It's very, very old, this now. You can see it was 60 quid. I mean, really expensive tool. But basically I've used the 0.8 to punch out the centre hole, as you saw me do, and then use the bigger one to punch out the washer, as you've seen me do. And then just push those over the brass rod and glue them in place. So that is basically that. I use my hammer, little tiny hammer. These are great, these little things. If you see one in a pound shop or something, pick it up. They're great for modelling. So I use the hammer for punching through. I use the ASK Instant Super Glue, this one here. ASK Thin Instant Glue, absolutely brilliant stuff. It does literally dry instantly, and it lasts a nice long time on your Pringles lid as well. So I've used that for there, and that I think is basically that. And just, you know, I use this this pin prick tool. It's just basically a pin and an aluminium holder. You could use a sewing needle, whatever, just to sort of mark my centres, and then before I start drilling. And that is that. Oh, and these cheap cutters I use for cutting the brass rod. These are real cheap, nasty ones, and they don't damage at all. They're hard as nails, so they're really good for cutting brass rod. So that's what I used there, and I think that is about that. Just one more quick thing before I go. I mentioned in one of my beginners videos we've got another error in the instructions here. You can see here we have the chassis empty, and then here all of a sudden these two bars have appeared, these two arms have appeared. That one's D5, that one's D4 in the kit. So the long one at the front, short one at the back. I think it's long and short, I can't remember that, but D4 at the back, D5 at the front, and they're going to basically go between these 2 points here, one there, and these 2 points on the top of the axle, there and there. Okay, so that's what they're for. So I'm not going to fit them until the axle's all glued in and the wheels are on and everything, because they will, obviously, as we've said before, they will stop my axles doing this, which is what I don't want to do. So what I'm going to do now is look at how we can look at getting these wheels. Hopefully the rear wheel inner drums are the same diameter as those. So let's get on with that. Right guys, I just want to clarify something I said earlier. I misspoke. These two parts that are missing here, they're the ones that aren't in the instructions there, and they are here. These two arms, K4 and K5. I said D4 and D5. They're K4 and K5. Sorry about that. Okay, so here we go. Right, a couple of hours later now. It's actually Sunday evening. It's the 4th of June, and it's, what is it now, 10 to 8. So Jess has been out. She's been to the pub, and she's had a great time. So, as you can see, I've got these rear drum brakes, wheel inners, whatever you want to call them. They're off. They are the same diameter as the front ones, which is great news. So it's all good to go. I've placed the chassis onto the rear axle like so, and what I'm finding, I don't know if you can hear that, if I hear that side, there's a gap. So I'm sort of thinking there's a bit of something going on, a twist in the chassis, but if I get my little spirit level out, then we can see that the chassis is, I mean, if I put it on the deck you can see we're level, so we're not level, we're actually a little bit higher that side. So the bubble is off to one side, so that, there we go, the bubble's off to one side there. Okay, so I can push that chassis down, keep it down, whatever. And then when I come to the back, you can see it's sort of in the middle, so maybe needs to come up a touch to keep it the same as the base. So we can't trust this modelling mat to be dead flat. I mean, I know we're talking microns here, we're talking thous, we're not talking microns, we're talking thous, but if you want to make sure that your axles are going to be all touching the ground, you need something that you know is flat. So this aluminium block I know is flat, and you can see there it's sat level. Okay, so we can put that chassis there, and we can see that if I just give it a little bit of a touch, it's pretty much level. But come back here, it's pretty much level, but if I push it down to close up that gap, oops, sorry, if I push it down to close up that gap, you can see it goes off. So we run the risk of, if we glue this rear end into here, and these brakes keep wanting to fall off, if we just glue this rear end into here as is, we run the risk of having wheels in the air, which we don't want. So what I'm going to do, I could either remove material from here, remove material from there, or just add something there. So I'm just going to add a little packing strip to the bottom of the chassis. So what we can do is come along here, fit that in there, and we can see where the end of the mounting comes. So basically I can come in with a pencil and hopefully it will work. It's that side I'm doing, isn't it? So hopefully a pencil will work. Yeah, we can just about see. So if I add a piece of plastic strip in there just to jack that side of the chassis up a touch, then things should be a lot better. Now this is probably not necessary because it is such a tiny amount. I mean, we're literally talking a couple of thou. I'm probably going to use 5 thou plastic card. These bloody laps will not stay on. I mean, it's nothing. So I'm going to grab my little pot here. As you all know, if you follow me, I have this pot of offcuts and stuff, and I've got all sorts of different thicknesses in here. So if I can try and find a really thin piece, where are we? There's a piece of 5 thou. So if I slip that in there, so we need probably 10 thou. So I'm going to get myself a bit of 10 thou strip, glue it to the bottom of the chassis, and see where we go. At the end of the day, we can always take it off, sand it off, whatever. Right, so I've added a little piece of plastic card, a piece of 10 thou plastic card there, and I've sanded it a little bit. And it's probably down to like 5 or 6 thou. It is literally nothing. And I'll be totally honest with you guys, this probably, I didn't need to do this. The weight of the tyres would have pulled it down, but I just wanted to show you, because although this is it's a video about building this kit, it's also, you know, how we get chassis straight, wheels touching the ground, and all sorts of bits and pieces. So basically I can put that spirit level on there, and you can see the bubble is off to that side, and on here the bubble is also off to that side, and if I put the slightest bit of pressure on the chassis, then it all comes up. So I know that basically now I've got all 6 wheels, or 10 wheels, whatever, but all 6 wheels, I've got all 6 hubs touching the ground. Now, just to make sure, because obviously these front wheels are wider and they're not sitting on that aluminium block, what we can do is, with the modelling mat, we can see we're over that way, and we can see there we're over that way. I'm not 100% sure this modelling mat is dead flat, but we have to assume it is. And I'm tapping down here, nothing is rattling, so everything is touching the ground. So we are now ready to glue that rear suspension in. But as I said earlier, I want to paint inside the chassis first, because getting paint up into there is going to be a nightmare. I'm not worried about getting the green up in there, but I want to get my black primer in there so that if anything, if we can't get the green in there, at least we have a black shadow rather than a bright tan coloured plastic showing through. So there we go. And the other thing we're going to need to do when we do this, obviously you can see we've got all this movement here. I can basically, bloody drum keeps falling off. I can basically move that around. So we're also going to look at how we're going to make it all dead square and parallel. So that's going to be for tomorrow, because I'm not working on this anymore today. So I'll get that black painted, and then I'll see you back tomorrow for getting that rear axle fitted in. Okay, it is indeed tomorrow now. Well, it's not tomorrow, it's today, but yesterday was, yeah, you know what I mean. So as you can see, we've done a bit of painting. We've got all this around this front end all painted black, so that's all cool. I've done inside the chassis rails, because as I said, it's going to be very difficult to do once everything's in there. So I've gone all the way along, done the cross members as well, because we're going to be fitting the gearbox. That's supposed to be a gearbox. It's horrible. It's disgusting for a kit of this price. I think it's diabolical, to be honest, but hey. So we've got to somehow fit that in, and that is going to be very, very tight to go in, because it goes up against this prop shaft here, and then we've got to get the back end of it to pop into front of that cross member, which is going to be a nightmare. I don't quite know how I'm going to do it. I think I might have to shorten those pins. I think what we'll do is take a bit of plastic off of those pins, which will make life a lot easier. If we put a bit of an angle on them as well, they might be more prone to slide in. This is a joke. This is a joke. I'm guessing somebody's going to come up with an aftermarket, but I don't want to wait for it. I want to get on and get this done. But, end of the day, once it's on a shelf, no one's ever going to pick it up and look under there anyway, are they? But getting that to go up in there is proving to be extremely difficult. Oh dear, it's gone. There we go. Oh, it's gone over the cross member instead of into the holes. It doesn't want to go into the holes. I'm guessing I've put a burr on the edge of those pins. There we go, it's gone in now. There we are. So that's in there. I don't think it even needs to be glued. It's not going to go anywhere. We may as well just put a drop into those pinholes, I'm guessing. If I can get in there. I don't think the glue's gone into the holes anyway. There we go, it's gone in there. Right, so that can stay in there. And the reason I had to put that in is because we have to fit this rear prop shaft before we put the rear suspension in. And I've built it up, here it is. Probably should have painted it first, but it doesn't matter because we can not glue it and keep it movable. So we've got the rear suspension painted as well. So that's going to make life a lot easier. I've cleaned off the paint there. I need to clean off the paint on here. Just so we get a nicer, stronger joint. So now that should pop into there, and then that should pop into there. Okay, that's a nice tight fit in there, that's good. Right, so we can get that to go into there, like so, and then this will go onto the chassis like so. And with that held in place, we can still turn that prop shaft. Yeah, it's a bit tight in there. I'm going to open that hole up a touch. There we go. So that will glue into there, like so, and then we should still be able to turn our prop shaft. Yes, we can. So that's that. So with that held there, we just need to grab some extra thin and get it into there. And get that glued in, just like so. Okay, so what we could do now, I think if I put it down, is it going to sit on those? No, it's sitting on the pumpkins. So what we need to do is get these brake discs off. Brake drums, sorry, not discs. As you can see, I've painted them as well because I thought they might be a bit of a nightmare to paint once they're on. So that's going to clip onto there. That's going to clip onto there. I don't really want to glue these on yet because I'd like to make sure they're dead vertical and all facing in the same direction and equidistant from the center line. Oh, bloody one keeps falling off. Right. So we can get our flat block, rest this on there. That bloody prop shaft's come out now. Oh God. How did that pop out? I ain't going to go back in. How the hell did that come out? There we go. Ah! This is driving around the bloody bend. Right. Oh, I'll tell you what. Piss off. There we go. So we can just leave that to dry. We can put weight on it if we need to. Just plonk some weight on there just to make that glue dry. And we'll come back to it when we're ready to start making sure everything's all true and square and everything. So, in fact, I need to do that now, don't I? Because, oh, bloody thing! Urgh! I need to do that now, don't I? Because there is movement in there, isn't there? So I need to grab my bars here and set these up like so, and make sure that we have equal distance from the chassis. So that's 30 to the edge of the radius. That's 30 to the edge of the radius. So now we know everything here is nice and square. There's a little bit of play in there anyway. There we are, just to be super sure, if you want to be super fussy, you could use your caliper like this. And put that down on there. This is so awkward to do on camera. There we go, we can push that out like that and then check this side. This is really, I'm going to do this off camera guys because I cannot do it, but basically I'm just going to use that. I would normally have this like in front of me, but at the moment I'm trying to do it all lop-handed, so I'm going to get this done off camera. But basically what I'm trying to do is make sure that the chassis is parallel to the faces of these wheels. That's the main thing, and then I know that my rear wheels will be facing forward and not like that off to one side. Right, so that's had a while to dry now, so everything's cool, and we've got everything all touching the ground. As you can hear, nothing's rattling, so that's all going to be good. We'll have all the wheels on the ground. I am aware, in case some of you want to point out, that these front wheels are not on the ground, on the metal block. I'm aware of that, but I'm not sort of, that'll only matter when I come to glue this pivoting part up. It won't matter. It won't matter at the moment because it's just basically about getting it all square. When I put it down on a flat base, we will still have the wheels touching because they can still pivot, you see. So there we go. Right, so we've basically pretty much finished with that metal block now. So I'm just looking here, there's some work to do around the front of the chassis, and I had to look at this front cross member and I'm thinking, this looks a bit weird. It looks like it's got there's no location for it. It's strange. When you look here, it's just sort of sat there in the middle of nowhere. So I got it off the sprue and cleaned it up, and sure enough, it just sort of, oh, that bloody brake drum! It just sort of just sits there and has no location. It looks like the actual front bumpers locate it, but then looking back here, it looks like there's no location for the bumpers in the chassis red or anything. So I really don't know what's going on here. Let's have a look at these front bumpers and see where we go from there. What part are they? They're F parts, so we'll have a look at them and see what happens. I'm looking at this front bumper assembly here. What they're telling us to do in the instructions is build them all up here with the lights and everything in, and then you're going to fit them onto the front of the chassis here along with this front cross member. I'm going to give it a go doing it a different way, because I think it's going to be quite difficult doing it this way to make sure that they're, you know, not twisted, they're not like this, they're not like that, and they're not like that. So I want to assemble them flat on the base with, you know, and then get them squared up and everything. So I know they're flat that way, I know they're square that way, and everything's going to be square and straight. So what I'm going to do, what I've noticed, if you put these excuse me, right, throat cleared. What I've noticed is if you put these on here like this, the front cross member is slightly higher. Oh no, actually it is okay. I was thinking it needs to go on a rule, but no, it doesn't. It's okay. Right, so we can have this down on the base. So basically what I'm going to do is glue these together. In fact, I'm going to use a spot of quick setting initially, just to give it a bite. Okay, so that'll hold that there, and then we can put the other one in. Make sure we get them the right way up. The little lugs on there go at the bottom, and the bottom of the cross member has these holes in it. So you can put that bumper in there. and hold that in again. Drop of quick setting in behind, just to keep it all together, and then we can put it down on the bench nice and flat, and we can put that one. We'll just place it on this rule because it does feel a bit better when it's on there, and then put this plastic rod across the front, get it all straight. So I reckon that is a lot easier than trying to do it actually on the chassis. I could be wrong, I might eat my words when it won't fit the chassis or something like that, but I'm sure that is an easier way to do it. So now we've done that, we can just, this is the bottom so it's not going to be seen anyway, we can just put some extra thin in there, let that wick around. After we want it to be nice and strong. Got hair in there. And there we are. So I believe that is a better way of doing it and guaranteeing that everything is flat, parallel, square, whatever, straight. As I say, I may well eat my words at the end of the day, we shall see. There we go, so that's that done. So I'm going to call it a day there for this video, guys. I'm not sure how long it's been because it's been done in lots of little bits and pieces, but it's probably nearly an hour, so that's plenty long enough. And we've sort of, in this video, we can call this covering the suspension because we've pretty much done all the suspension now. I shall wait until we've got everything on, and then I'll put these rods here which hold the axles. They're the ones that hold the axles in that plane there. So it's getting quite weighty as well. So I'll see you all soon for part 3. So thank you for watching, and any questions, comments, stick them down below. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, and if you like the video, hit the like. See you all soon. Bye for now.